Good day, folks. This is Bob back again. Today, my subject is to talk about how destructive foreign policy run off Twitter, social media becomes for a country to get out of, right? What kind of disadvantage it creates, right? And this is especially been true for Maldives, and it's also true for Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Right? Bangladesh, when they have free and fair election, you can see how that plays out. Is generally anti-India. Sri Lanka was also run basically anti-India campaigns, and in elections, so has Nepal, so has Maldives, and almost all the cases, India is made out to be this bad guy, and the opposition wins. That was the case of Yamin. That was the case of Rajapaksa. But you got to wonder why. When the bad guys were creating all this debt problems for all these countries, whether it's Nepal, whether it is Sri Lanka, now it's going to be Maldives, is China. Where have we failed? Where is it that we failed to create this same narrative? Why have we not been able to do, or we just not doing it because we're scared of China? I'm not so sure. Because it's clear, crystal clear, that our strategy in all these three countries should be to create a undercurrent of anti-China, so that they can be free and fair elections, and not gamed against India, right? Where do we lose, right? But that's not to say what these three ministers got up and said, right? I've always said Lakshadweep, and this is a presentation paper I'd made to the powers in the NSA some years ago, that Lakshadweep is a serious counter to Maldives, right? We should develop, in conjunction probably with Maldives, a set of resorts, competitive resorts, which put Maldives in a position where it's not constantly able to come and debate with us and throw out China. Same thing with Sri Lanka. For the longest time, we did not allow deep sea port shipping to happen on coastal India. The reason was because all this work was being done by ports in Sri Lanka. So you got to know this, that Hambantot's economic livelihood is based on Hyundai's plant on the coast of Tamil Nadu, because the cars come in these ships. They come to Hambantota, where they're reloaded into these big ships because of deep draft. But why didn't we have that? We could have deep drafted a number of ports on our coast and not allowed Sri Lanka to hold the upper hand. But we did. Similarly, in Nepal, we've done the same thing, gone after it, especially on a religious and cultural issue. And there, as you understand, the Communist Party that continues to be in power is not a religious party at all. In fact, religion is anathema to them, just like our Communist Party, right? So, but when you run this, so this what those ministers were fired. They were totally out of place to do this. They should never have done it. They've been fired. But a lot of blame rests with us. Why did we lose this narrative? We had it for 5 years and we had done a lot of good work on the ground. Why did we lose it? Is there nobody in Maldives, just like there was nobody in Sri Lanka when the coup happened, telling us what's actually going down in the ground, but everybody else seemed to know except our people in power here? Something amiss. So, reduced inquiries, plummeting prices for vacancy in Maldives, Lakshadweep's Lakshya Newport, more hotels. India not in a hurry to host Maldives. President probably shouldn't be. Amid remark Rao, Maldives explores Muizu's India visit. Remarks against Modi, India raises concerns with Maldives envoy. And this is EU tells you this. EU report says anti-India sentiments were deployed during Maldives presidential polls. They sure were. I was hearing it from my people in Maldives, right? In China, Muizu calls Beijing a valued ally, and China gets up and says, "We will not allow the Maldivians to be pushed around by India." Well, that's staring us and poking a finger in our eyes right there. And Rajnath Singh in the United Kingdom is saying that while we don't view China as an adversary, what do you mean you don't view China as an adversary? Of course, if that's the only reason why we are pussyfooting around China, right? LAC situation stable but sensitive, says Army Chief. Firmly oppose external interference in Maldives, says China, as Muizu ends trip. This is what I mean, right? And LAC situation stable but sensitive, says Army Chief. I'm not sure what he's saying, right? Strain in ties hit President's proposed visit to India. India summons envoys, turns heat on Maldives. India wraps Maldives envoy as boycott chorus rises. But this is what I'm saying. Boycott. Why would a general public want to boycott? This is because there's a troll army. There's the IT cell, which wants to create the what? John Abraham, Salman Khan. Really, let's grow up, man. This is not foreign policy, right? Diplomacy in the digital public square, says Nishant Gupta. This dichotomy between India's position and brash social media campaigns underlines challenge for foreign policy in changing times. It absolutely does, right? But this is also what we have to be careful about, because just remember, ISIS bust, corpse on trail of Maldives. In Maldives, as a percentage of its population, has supplied the largest number of terrorists to ISIS, right? Now, why is Maldives, three key issues for India and for them. Okay. For them, location and for us, location and maritime security. He says Maldives' proximity to the west coast of India, barely 70 nautical miles from Minokwari and 300 nautical miles from India's west coast, and its location as the hub of commercial sea lanes running through the Indian Ocean, particularly 8-degree N and 1.5-degree N channels, imbues it with significant strategic importance to India. It most likely does. Defense, it is the reason why India invests on Maldives security by training its defense forces, because Maldives could end up becoming a physical hub for terrorists to attack India, right? Then China. The China have also worked their way in the past 15 years. Maldives opened its embassy in the country in 2009, and this reason was the first time India faltered, because the embassy was opened the same day Manmohan Singh landed in Malé for the SAARC, and the disturbance that caused, well, that took a long time getting out of, right? Upgrading ties with Maldives, China says it will help neighbors safeguard sovereignty. Maldives, China signed 20 pacts as Muizu meets Xi. Modi discusses ties with Mozambique, Timor-Leste heads. Now, this is very critical. Now, if you see the physical map, right? Maldives, India, and Mozambique, India has very critical relationships. And that's how you control essentially the Arabian Ocean and the Indian Ocean against China. Elections not, and with Bangladesh, right? Elections not free or fair, but will partner with Bangladesh, says US. Bangladesh poll booths set on fire on election eve as opposition starts strike. Bangladesh PM says election free and fair. Hasina's party sweeps election, wins almost 75% of the seats. Here, folks, voting percentage below 40%. It obviously can't be free and fair. It's obviously can't. But the United States, given into Indian pressure and because of China, has said it will still continue to support. But the war that we should be worried about, Maldives, and the other is Myanmar. Myanmar rebels claim town on China border. It says, this is the China brief by James Palmer. The highlights this week: anti-government rebels in Myanmar target cyber scam operations along the border with China. Xi vows no mercy for corruption amid high-level purges, and Taiwan prepares for elections on Sunday. Myanmar rebels surge in China border region. Now this, folks, is the most important one. This week, anti-government forces in Myanmar took control of Laogai, the capital of Kok Kang region, which borders China. An offensive led by the Three Brotherhood Alliance, which compromises several ethnic militias, that began last October in the country's north, has been remarkably successful, changing the balance in Myanmar's ongoing civil war. But just to remember, for us, the same thing is happening in Mizoram. We had 150 soldiers cross over into Mizoram. Mizoram is in trouble. Manipur is in trouble. Cookies, both sides are affiliated for tribes in Myanmar. In fact, our Mizo current chief minister is going ahead and said that the barrier that was created was all false. Militants fire at cops in Manipur, 4 injured. Villagers flee as gunfight in Manipur enters days 2. Important. And the next big thing was the Bhutan election. Bhutan elects a new prime minister. He says, with democracy under assault across much of South Asia, Bhutan seems to be an outlier. It began a relatively smooth transition from traditional monarchy to democracy a little more than 15 years ago, courtesy India. But unlike the elections held in Bangladesh last Sunday and those scheduled in Pakistan on February 8, Bhutan's vote wasn't plagued by concerns about rigging and unlevel playing field. He says Bhutan's economy is suffering in part due to tourism sector still struggling to recover from COVID-19. The youth unemployment rate is 29% in a country and half of its population is under 30 years old. Young people are leaving Bhutan in record numbers. This is very, very important and very, very unsafe for India because of China, right? Both runoff candidates made economic recovery the central pillar of the campaign. Bhutan's neighbors, especially India, can also help. Bhutan is flush with hydropower potential and energy deficient New Delhi would be a useful customer. India is already contributing to Bhutan's economy development through infrastructure projects, including recently announced railroad initiative. However, Bhutan's ties to India also make it a battleground for India-China competition and sometimes confrontation. In 2017, India and China clashed over Doklam, border area claimed by both Bhutan and China. This week, India's NDTV published satellite images that it said show a Chinese military presence on territory claimed by Bhutan, right? Pro-India, Tobagay said to be Bhutan's PM second time. And then Nepal. Nepal, we've always lost the plot because of, this government especially continues to think it's a last bastion of Hindu Rashtra, while the communist parties don't think so. They just play us against China, right? Jaishankar and Nepal pacting for 10,000 megawatt electricity export to India. India committed to redefining ties with neighborhood partners, EAM in Nepal, but we are losing the plot. I mean, we really am not sure whether we know what we're doing. EAM seems to be a lot more comfortable in the United States, in the West, and Japan, or as he says, the Quad and whatever mythological name it gave it. India Nepal sealed 10,000 megawatt hydropower deal for 10 years. EM discusses West Asia Ukraine with counterparts, with Quad counterparts. And Pakistan is something you really like, I said, buddy. TTP blast kills 6 Pakistani cops in anti-polio drive. And as Tilak Tiveshwar writes, right, Baloch March shows Pakistan has not learnt lessons from 19. A comparison with the situation in there, East Pakistan is inescapable. It was the oppression and exploitation of Bengalis that increased their alienation and resulted in the eventual creation of Bangladesh. Like the Bengalis, the Baloch today are marginalized politically and shoved to the fringes in the imagination and policies of the ruling Punjabi elite. They are as much second-class citizens in Punjabi-dominated system as were the Bengalis. Pakistan has clearly not learned lessons from 71. And this is where China is also going to have hell to pay. But in the Middle East, finally the Israelis, I think, have had enough. Don't say the Palestinians have had enough. I think the Israelis have had enough. Path to Palestinian state, best way to stabilize region, isolate Iran, says Blinken. Iran seizes oil tanker at center of dispute with US of Oman. Modi holds roadshow with UAE president. How important I2U2, how important the Middle East to India is, actually shows up with all this, whether it's investment. And do remember, when we talk about India UAE in key deals to strengthen I2U2 bloc, Modi holds bilateral meets with CEOs on sidelines of vibrant Gujarat. Avoid further harm in Gaza, Blinken tells Israel. Then you have Blinken calls on Israel to build ties with Arab countries. Hezbollah drone strike hits Israeli base far from border. The US is worried that this should not go beyond where it is. And that's why Israel is beginning to pull back and actually, without declaring it, saying that. And I think Bibi's time as a prime minister is more or less over. India, UAE start direct talk trade in rupee dirham. How many of you know that rupee was the legal tender of Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, late into the 60s, right? Blinken meets Palestinian president, discusses post-war reforms. Blinken seeks Palestinian governance reform for post-war Gaza as Israeli strikes continue. Yemen's Houthi launch largest Red Sea strike. UNSC to vote on issue. Israel starts new phase of war with fewer troops and strikes. Top Hezbollah commander killed in suspected Israeli hit. Blinken meets Turkey Erdogan amid tensions. Israel Hezbollah exchange fire despite war spillover concerns. And India UK FTA dialogue to enter final stages tomorrow. This is very critical for India's growth, is all the FTAs we are doing with the UK and the Australia and all that. Well, and then I have this Indo-French relationship, when commerce meets romance. This is by Shobha Day. I can tell you that good old Macron is for sale. You buy a few Raphael, he is going to be chief guest for anything. right? And then what does C. Uday Bhaskar has to write? C. Uday Bhaskar has to write. Let's finish off with this. A note to security planners. Conflicts in the past 2 years, whether Ukraine, Russia, or Hamas, Israel, illustrate the necessity to anticipate out of the box security exigencies. Okay. And then he says, India enters 2024 with a complex set of security challenges, both on the external front and the LICIS low intensity conflict internal security domain. The security postures of China and Pakistan individually and the strategic cooperation between them, as also their support to non-state entities, is an abiding challenge for Delhi. For both, we are being fingered by both China and Pakistan, right? Furthermore, the probability that current Hamas Houthi churn could embolden groups in the subcontinent to advance the anti-India agenda remain high. The spike in terrorist violence in Jammu is illustrative. So you gotta gear up, folks. We cannot run foreign policy of social media, especially in our near periphery or and slightly outer periphery, which includes Middle East. Because what's happening with this current election, right? While he said that he's only noted Bangladesh as being a struggling election. I think India is also going to have to be watched carefully, because it seems that the focus seems to be shifting on religion. And in that, when you've shifted on religion, right, and the majority religion, who are your collateral damages? The Middle East, Pakistan, you don't care, right? Then let me just also end. In terms of a war threat, Pakistan's not it. Pakistan's not going to attack us. We are not going to have a war with Pakistan for the next 5-6 years. First, it needs us and it needs the United States for its economy. Otherwise, like Deveshwar said, Balochistan may just end up splitting from Pakistan, right? What is our threat, India's threat? Militarily, it's only China. And I think we are forgetting that, especially with statements being made that Rajnath Singh demoralizing our forces, Jaishankar, same thing. But the outer periphery, because of our domestic politics, where the collateral damage could be Bangladesh, could be the Middle East, could be countries like Maldives, could be any country that is essentially a Muslim country. So we gotta be careful. 3 cheers and Jai Hind. As we go into the next year, we are looking at extremely difficult terrain that we need to maneuver through in foreign policy. Jai Hind.